Welcome, friends. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat as we give everyone a minute to join and settle in. We're so glad you're here with us. So, my name is Olivia, and I would like to officially welcome you all to our April Quaker Changemaker event. I serve as the program coordinator at Friends Place on Capitol Hill, which is FCNL's Quaker Guest House and Learning Center. And I'll be stepping in for our friend Alicia McBride and serving as the host for this evening. I'm really excited to welcome everyone to our April Quaker Changemaker event, an Earth Month call to action. And for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, we're FCNL, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, which is a national, nonpartisan Quaker advocacy organization that works with Congress to try to pass laws that advance peace, justice, and care for the environment. And this Quaker Changemaker series is a regular gathering with friends, supporters from around the country to spotlight the incredible ways that our network is called to act in service of the world that we seek. Before we begin the program this evening, I'd like to just share a few tech and logistical notes about how we'll gather with each other. So again, we're gathering on Zoom. I'm really happy everyone was able to join us. Part of our job is to make sure things run as smoothly as possible for everyone engaging in the program. Please say hello and introduce yourself in the chat. Hello to everyone who's introducing yourself now. You can share your name, you can share where you're calling from, and your meeting or church, if any. This is a way for us to build community virtually, and it's really fun just to see who all is here with us, how many places we have represented, and we're just so glad that all of you are here. As you can see, we're recording the event this evening, but the audience will not be included in the recording for privacy reasons. Even so, please feel free to turn off your video if you are uncomfortable keeping it on, your choice. And then captioning is available automatically. Usually at the bottom of the Zoom bar, you'll see on the black Zoom bar, it'll say CC captions. You can press that to be able to see captions. And if you do not want to see the captions, you can click on the live transcript option on your Zoom toolbar and just click hide subtitles. As you have any questions or comments throughout the conversation, we invite you to please type them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address as many questions as we have time for, but just know that we likely won't get to all of them. Please still submit your questions and your comments in the chat, and we'll make sure to get them to our guests. And then if you're in need of any Zoom tech support, Jackson Malkus is our tech host this evening. Jackson serves as the outreach and events coordinator at Friends Place, part of our Friends Place team, stepping in for Micah Nicholson this evening. So you can just send Jackson a private message, or you can email him at jmalkus@friendsplacedc.org. And Jackson will send his email in the chat as well. Thank you, Jackson, for being our tech host this evening. All right, now I'll invite us to begin together in just a minute of some grounding silent worship, and I'll bring us out of that time of silent worship. Thank you, friends. I hope we can all take some deep breaths and feel grounded. We know that there is so much trying to steer us off course, to distract us. So let us take some intentional time to really inhabit the time, the space, the body that we're in. Let us feel our feet firmly planted on the floor and be grounded in the land that we inhabit, the season that we're in. Let us notice the soil, the trees, the birds, the flowers, the water, and the air, asking ourselves what lessons we might learn from them about resilience and adaptation to a changing climate, both environmentally, socially, politically. We know that we are all carrying a lot right now. And so we'd just like to extend gratitude to all of you for all of the ways that you're showing up in your communities and for showing up. So thank you. And now to review our plan for our time together, I'm first going to turn it over to two of our guests, my colleagues, Darren Karn and Anna Agudo, who will be introducing FCNL's work on sustainable energy and the environment. They'll share some updates from Congress and from the administration about the moment when we're in when it comes to protecting clean energy investments from cuts. And then we're going to turn it over to some friends from around the country to share stories about how they have been called to take action on climate and the environment, both with FCNL and within their own meetings and their own communities. And then finally, we'll take action together by writing some email messages to our members of Congress, sharing personal stories about why action on clean energy is so urgently important to us right now. We're going a little bit longer than we usually go this evening. So the first hour will be with Darren and Anna and then sharing stories for our friends. And then we'll have an additional half hour at the end where we'll be taking action together, writing those stories. So we invite you all to stay with us for the full time if you're able to, or to just be with us for whatever time you're able to share. And we're so glad that everyone's here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren, FCNL's Legislative Manager on Sustainable Energy and the Environment. Take it away, Darren.
Great. Well, thank you, Olivia. Hi, friends. It's so nice to see you all. So good to see familiar faces and also some new faces. So yeah, as Olivia said, my name is Darren Karin. I am the Legislative Manager for the Energy and Environment Program here at FCNL. I am joined by my other amazing partner in this work, Anna Aguto, who will be speaking with us in just a moment. So thankful to have her as, again, a partner in all this great work. So really appreciate her time being here as well. So friends, in this beginning portion, before we hear from stories from folks in our network, Anna and I wanted to take a moment to talk about introducing some of the work that we're doing with regard to protecting clean energy investments, and then also spend this time to update you on kind of where we are in the process of defending these credits on the Hill. So for my portion of this, I wanted to really tackle three main questions right here at the top of the call. One, what is our legislative ask that we're all focused on right now? Two, why is this, our main focus? And then three, why is this important right now in this particular moment? And then Anna will jump in afterwards to give us more of a congressional update on kind of where we are with our work. So first, what is the legislative ask that we're all gathered here to talk about? So our main issue is urging Congress to protect the clean energy tax credits and jobs created by the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. So specifically, why are we focused so heavily on this issue at this moment? Well, as you all might remember, the Inflation Reduction Act was a huge piece of legislation passed in 2022 that represented not only our nation's largest ever piece of legislation to combat the climate crisis, but it was the world's largest ever piece of legislation to combat the climate crisis. Repealing it, therefore, would take us extremely far away from our goal of not only reaching an emissions peak, but reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So, in other words, if this bill were to be fully repealed, it would make it almost impossible for us to reach that goal of net zero carbon emissions by mid-century. Additionally, we've seen ample research come out at this point showing just the economic impacts of the repeal of this piece of legislation beyond just the environmental impacts. So some of those pieces that you'll hear about from us through blogs, through our emails and engagement with you, is that repealing this legislation would cost hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs. It would put at risk hundreds of billions of dollars of economic investment around the country in every state in the union. And finally, repealing this bill would increase all of our electricity bills by an average of 10%. And that would go up to as much as 40%, according to some research in certain states, especially in the Midwest, like Missouri or Kansas. So this would have not only devastating impacts on our climate and our environment, but it would have devastating impacts on the most economically insecure folks in our nation and cost us, uh, you know, much needed jobs and a lot of time needed to solve the climate crisis. So that is kind of both what the ask is, why we're really focusing on this, but that third question, why is this important right now? Why is this being targeted in the way that it is by certain folks on the Hill? To put it shortly, if you've been following the news, you know that the president and the new majorities in both the House and Senate are looking to quickly
Darren, we're losing
extend.
your connection. If you want to
Oh no,
pause. Oh, there we go.
can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, so that third question, why is this important right now? Why is this a focus? So the president and the new majorities in the House and Senate are looking to extend the 2017 tax cut package. That's going to be an extraordinarily expensive endeavor that they need to embark on. And to be able to pay for, quote unquote, pay for those extensions, they need to offset the cost by repealing other pieces of legislation. So that is one of the main reasons why these critical investments are being are potentially on the chopping block for this new administration. You've probably also heard that Medicaid and SNAP are also some of those other pieces that are potentially being targeted for repeals or for cuts to help pay for these tax credits. Now, this is something, of course, very concerning to us for all the reasons that we just mentioned, the environmental consequences of doing this and the economic costs of doing this. And so we are working very hard to protect that historic win that we got in 2022 with the help of all of you and all of your advocacy to defend these important investments in our climate and in environmental justice. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Anna to give us a little bit of an update on kind of where we are in the congressional timeline for this issue and why our voices are incredibly important at this particular moment on this issue. So Anna, over to you.
Well, thank you, Darren, and hello, everybody. My name is Anna Gudo. I'm the program assistant working on the environment and energy team as well as a Native American advocacy team. And it's wonderful to see all of your faces and to share this space with you. So as Darren said, I'm going to give a brief update on what is currently happening on the Hill and where the IRA clean energy tax credits come into play. So as Darren said, the new majority and Republican leadership are looking for things to cut to fund these tax credits. So they're looking at about $1.5 trillion in cuts. So we're currently in a process called reconciliation. And you may have heard last week and these past weeks, the House and Senate both passed budget resolutions calling for these cuts. But these are just the blueprints. They're not the binding cuts. And what is happening is that now each committee that's responsible for certain parts of the budget will take this blueprint and actually write the budget. And then in committee, they'll have to review it and then pass it. And that's the second step of this process. But that second step has yet to happen. So they've passed the budget resolutions. That's the first step, but they're still in the process of actually writing what that will look like. And that's why our advocacy right now is so important, because we would love for the IRA clean energy tax credits to not even be written in this next step. So what we've been doing to advocate is obviously to be lobbying to protect the clean energy tax credits and to highlight the ways that our network has been using these tax credits, and to really show that faith communities have benefited from the tax credits, and want to continue keeping them. And I just want to highlight that advocacy works. 21 House Republicans have written in support of a pragmatic approach to this process and to clean energy in general. This is not the first time that House Republicans have defended the IRA tax credits. They did so in the last Congress, but there's been an increase of 7 members to that letter. So 7 new members have come out in support of the IRA clean energy tax credits. And most recently, 4 Republican senators wrote to the Senate Majority Leader to also have a pragmatic approach in this process, and also in defense of the tax credits. And those senators are Senator Murkowski, Moran, Tillis, and Curtis. And so this is really heartening to see that as we continue to push and show the ways that these tax credits help people, help Republican states and Republican districts, as well as Democratic states and districts, that we can see that support hopefully continue as we enter this next crucial moment, while committees are currently taking the blueprint and actually writing where these cuts will come from. Yeah, so that's the update on kind of what's happening in the process. I'm going to pass it back to Darren to kind of talk a little bit more about our engagement.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Anna. Super helpful. And we will, as you can see in the chat here, there's a great question about, Mary Lou was asking about if we could get info from her specific state, and Olivia put a great link in the chat. So feel free to check that out, and you can enter in your zip code and see within a certain radius of your zip code how many billions of dollars of investment there's been from the IRA. So encourage everybody to do that as well. Yeah, so as Anna was saying, we are not doing this work alone, thankfully. We are in a huge coalition of other faith groups around the country that are really focused heavily on this important issue. So we are working very closely with many partners across the faith community, including in an interfaith way. So our Muslim and Jewish friends, Hindu, Buddhist friends, as well as other Christian and Quaker groups as well. And huge shout out as well to one of our really amazing colleagues and partners in this work, Quaker Earth Care Witness. And Keith, I believe, is on the call. So shout out to Keith specifically for all the great work that QEW is doing, including here in a few weeks. They will have their another action hour that we would invite you all to. And we'll share some more details about that call at the end of this call today. So just to say, this work really is effective because we are working in partnership and because we are pushing everybody with this same message towards their members of Congress to pressure them to do the right thing, to send these letters in support of these clean energy tax credits, and eventually to vote to help protect these credits once that final vote comes up in both the House and the Senate. So all of the work that we're going to do today together in sending these letters is part of a broader campaign of persuasion. So thank you all again for being here, and super excited to pass it over to our colleague Olivia to introduce some of our panelists to talk about their stories and what they're doing already in support of these credits and other climate actions that they're doing. So Olivia, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Darren. And Darren, before you unmute, how's my sound coming through for you?
We can hear you fine. Yeah.
Great. Some internet troubles on my end, so I'll keep my camera off for now. But thank you so much, Darren and Anna, to both of you for sharing that context about how FCNL has been working with Congress and how we are responding in the moment legislatively. And so now's the portion of the evening where we'd love to hear from some of our other friends here with us tonight in the network about how you all have been called to take action in your own communities in support of our Earth and in support of our climate. First, I'll invite our friend Silka from New York, and then we'll hear some stories from, I see Pat Finley from Philadelphia Yearly Meeting on the call. And then finally, we'll hear from our friend Anne with Adelphi Friends Meeting, and then we'll have some time for questions and conversation. But Silka, starting with you, if you're able to join us, I just wanted to ask, how have you been called to take action recently in support of our climate? Sharing both about your recent experience with us at FCNL in DC and some of the work that you've done with your meeting.
Okay, hi, sorry, wouldn't allow me to unmute for a minute there. Hi, I'm Silka Jackson. It's great to see you all. Thank you, Olivia, and everyone for this meeting, and it's great to see you all. And yeah, so one thing that Olivia asked me to talk a little about was when there was a Quaker gathering, Friends World Committee for Consultation had a gathering in Peru, a world gathering, and out of it came a sustainability minute. And so the idea from that was to bring that back to our meetings and have every meeting, yearly meeting, monthly meeting, take action on something concrete you could do to help the environment. And so what we decided to ask our yearly meeting to do is to divest from fossil fuels, because New York yearly meeting actually has, the idea was that everyone can look at what they have to offer, right? Different meetings have different resources, and New York actually has some money, and some meetings don't, So, so it was just an exciting process because I didn't really know very much about investing, and I was talking with people from our meeting who some people were excited about it. Some people said it wasn't possible, that we would lose too much money and stuff. So I feel like the whole process of doing that and also working with FCNL is empowering in terms of I was on these websites looking at, well, is it going to lose us money? Really understanding, learning about something that I didn't know about, and realizing that I don't have to be an expert to participate and kind of speak up for what seems right. Anyway, it was a gradual process, but eventually our yearly meeting decided to divest from fossil fuels, and then we decided to ask Friends Fiduciary, who also invests Quaker money, from all over the U.S. and maybe, I'm not sure if beyond the U.S., but and we started talking with them about it, and they said, well, we don't think this is a very important issue to Quakers, so we're going to stay where we are with this. And we were like, actually, it's pretty important, and we got a bunch of different, we reached out to people and had people send letters and share. Sometimes I feel the whole environmental thing is really about communication. And if we can all share our ideas and have people realize this does matter. It matters to everyone that we have a clean, planet, a healthy planet to live on. anyway, that was again another kind of FCNL moment, even though it wasn't within FCNL, where I was talking to the chief financial officer of Friends Fiduciary about, funds and environment and clean energy stuff, and other people. We started a climate action, climate justice working group in New York yearly meeting. We all, pitched in. It wasn't just me, but it was an opportunity for me to kind of step outside of what I knew and take action. And Friends Fiduciary decided to divest. After time, all these people weighing in and all this, they divested, from fossil fuels. So it was just really exciting, and I think it's just great to step outside of our comfort zone and learn and find ways of talking to people. So that was my story about that.
Thank
I know
you.
you had, there was something about working with the last visit with but I can tell that later, or whatever is good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, thank you so much for sharing that, Silke, and for that work that you did. And yeah, we were so happy to have you join us at Friends Place in Washington, D.C. for our fly-in on climate justice and protecting these clean energy investments. And I learned a lot about sort of your district and your members and kind of where I believe it was Rep. Lawler that you met with, and I'd love to just hear kind of your take on what it was like for you to come to DC to talk with your legislators at this moment, this past February. And any advice you have for friends here on the call who might be doing some of their own lobbying with their members of Congress?
Yeah, well, one thing that's interesting is I was at there was a lobby weekend, and we didn't have, this is just in the past, this is just a recommendation to talk to people when you have a chance to talk to people, because we didn't have anything scheduled with Lawler's office in this particular time. And I just went and dropped by, and I spoke to this kid, William Layton. I shouldn't say kid, but he was like an intern, and he went to a Quaker school, and he was working in Lawler's office, and he just went out in the office and we chatted. And it turns out we're going to have a meeting with him now, because he's a legislative, now he's kind of moved up, and I've spoken with him 2 times, just when I happen to be in DC. And so it seems like it's worthwhile to just meet people and build relationships. And I had a fond feeling just from talking to him, and I think that kind of just human connection is such a big deal. It just makes, so you're not feeling like an enemy with the person that you're speaking with. You feel like you share common ground, and yeah, when we went and we spoke with Jamari Hartley this last time, who I think deals with energy and environment for Lawler. And he actually had worked with Clarence Edwards, who used to be the kind of overseeing FCNL's environmental stuff. And he had so much respect for Clarence, and they worked together at Citizens Climate Lobby. And I had that's a great organization. So anyway, he said that Lawler is very supportive about keeping the clean energy tax credits, and he was completely on board, and anyway, it was just positive to have that feeling of connection. I know there's Lawler, as in my area, cuts to Medicaid, or people are really upset with him. And we invited him to come to our meeting for something, and I was like, God, what are we gonna do? Because people are like so upset. I just felt like, is it wrong for us to have this guy who's doing this to our meeting? And I was talking with some of the FCNL people, and they were like, having a conversation is always going to be an asset, to be able to talk to these people about stuff. And so I just feel like there's a bit of a positive grounding now, in terms of reaching out to him. And I think that's good. It's groundwork for more discussion.
I love how you said that, Silke. It's all about like building that groundwork for more discussion, and just hearing you emphasize that importance of building that human connection, and kind of, you never know when you're going to find common ground, whether it's with the member themselves, with their staff. So thank you so much, Silke, for joining us both in DC, for sharing that story, for joining us tonight. And we're wishing you the best with all of your continued work. I know you may need to hop off the call early, so we'll say bye here. But thank you so much again. And next, I'd love to invite up our friend Pat Finley from Philadelphia Yearly Meeting to share in response to the same question. How have you and your community been called to act on climate, and particularly to share a little bit about the Eco-Justice Collaborative at Philadelphia Yearly Meeting and what work you all have taken on?
One major project we began in 2020, January, is to ask the yearly meeting to take climate as a priority. We already have one other priority, and that is race. And so took us about a year and a half, but they finally agreed to say, yeah, this is important to us. It's a priority. We're going to put a lot of our resources behind fighting climate change. And some of us would like to stop saying climate change, and we call it climate catastrophe or climate crisis. So as a result of that priority, we established something called the Climate Stewards. And I'm one of them, and Ruth Darlington, I think some of you know Ruth Darlington, are climate stewards, and we established benchmarks for the yearly meeting. And most recently, we established the benchmark of bringing Philadelphia Yearly Meeting into net zero in the next 2 or 3 years. And we've recently hired a consultant who will help us measure where the problems are. And one of the areas that we're working on is transportation. One of our buildings is a LEED Platinum certified, and that doesn't mean it's perfectly zero, but we're working on making it zero. But transportation is a difficult one, and we're going to try to find ways to measure it and then work on reducing the carbon footprint from transportation. We're not going to be able to do that necessarily, reduce our carbon footprint completely, but we could use offsets. And one of the plans is to create offsets within the yearly meeting by supporting projects that reduce carbon footprint throughout the yearly meeting. So this project of net zero is focused on the yearly meeting and administrative staff, their travel, and the cost of the carbon costs of all of our events. So that's one of them. Eco-Justice has been going in under one name or another since the early 90s. And I think most of you at FCNL have heard of Ed Dreby and Margaret Mansfield. They've been really important at FCNL and at PYM and in the climate work. So some of the other things we've been doing is we've been trying to bring the meetings together in putting it out that we're a mosaic, that our work in climate is a mosaic of efforts, and we have action areas such as activism, education, lowering our carbon footprint, finance, and mourning loss and instilling hope. And so one of the means that we have of bringing people together is the Friendly Households Project. We're asking meetings to have such a project and use our climate playbook which lays out how you can set up a project, how you can manage it. But the Friendly Households project is it's sort of organized around potlucks. And at potlucks, we identify what it is we want to do that's beyond what we've done before. And we work together to see how we can support each project. Like you have your own project or you have a group project, but we all support each other. And I think Eco Justice works that way too. We're a group of leaders in various projects, and each person focuses on one thing and yet supports every other project within the group.
Thank
And
you.
go
Oh
ahead.
no, please finish.
I was really interested in what Silky said about Friends Fiduciary, because we were working on it too, and we were very proud when we heard that the Green Fund was created, and then later on they divested completely from fossil fuels. I'm suspecting that yearly meetings all over the country have been working with Friends Fiduciary, and they told everybody the same thing. Well, Friends aren't really interested in this right now. And we made sure, all of us together, that they realize we are interested in this. So I'd love to check in with Silky at some point about all their efforts.
I'm happy to offer to connect you both. And please feel free, anyone, feel free if you'd like to connect with others on the call tonight. You can share your email addresses in the chat. And yeah, Pat, I especially love learning about the kind of longevity of your all's work at Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. Something that I'd love to ask you is, what would you say motivates you personally to take action on the environment and climate, and kind of your story about how you got involved in this work to begin with?
Well, I have to say, I just turned 80. So I was there when Rachel Carson wrote her book, and I read it. And I read Paul Ehrlich's Population Bomb. And I became very emotionally involved in the idea of protecting the earth. And now I'm a Quaker. And I think that it's definitely a faith issue for me. And I think that one of the action areas that we've adopted, mourning loss and instilling hope, this is our way of showing reverence for the planet and for each other. And it's an emotional and spiritual connection that I feel when I think about the planet and this work.
And I know you are not alone in sharing that call and that feeling, and sort of the root at what motivates us to take action. The last question I wanted to ask, or go ahead if you wanted to add on.
Yes, I'm really kind of proud of this. My meeting this weekend began planting a mini forest. They started with 20 trees, and we're very excited. We've got this large piece of property, and we're starting on the periphery, and we're going to be moving in a spiral to make it more and more dense into the center. So this will be native plants, and we'll be focusing on native habitats too. So I'm kind of excited about that one.
That is so exciting. That's so wonderful. We'd love to see pictures as it grows. Yes. And it really is all of these things combined. I love how you framed it. Our work is a mosaic. Our work on climate is a mosaic. It is, restoring native habitats, planting flowers, as much as it is divesting from fossil fuels and talking to our members of Congress. So really grateful that you all are taking on so many pieces of that mosaic. The last question I just wanted to ask is, many of us here on this call are organizers and leaders within our own communities. And we're constantly thinking about how can we, grow this movement and grow the number of people who are showing up to calls like this tonight. And I'd love just to hear a little bit about how are you getting new people involved in this work through your meeting? Where are you finding success getting new folks involved?
Well, people are surprised. We have a lot of young families in my meeting. And I think that we get them because we're sort of very visible in the community. We've connected with other churches, especially African-American churches. And we have a very large community garden that's open to the township. And so as a result, we've gotten lots of young families, and we've got a lot of children. And I don't know, we are just a really happy, active meeting, and we're visible. We're in
Yeah,
the community.
that visibility in the community can play such a huge role. And yeah, having that garden, having that presence. Well, thank you so much for sharing those stories. I know I'm definitely finding some inspiration from them as well. So thank you so much, Pat, for sharing.
You're welcome.
And our oh yes, we have a friend asking, what monthly meeting are you in, Pat?
Old Haverford Friends.
Old
Town,
Haverford
Pennsylvania.
Friends.
Oh, we also founded Quaker Action. I don't know, I'm one of the founding members of Quaker Action, which is, we're trying to work with you at some point, but we're mid-Atlantic region area, but we're focusing mostly on Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania has been kind of bad with regard to environment and social issues. So we're a lobbying group, a 501c4 lobbying group.
Amazing. Well, definitely please do stay in touch with us and let all of us know, not just those of us on FCNL staff, how we can support you and your work. And then I wanted to also give some space for our friend Anne from a Delphi Friends meeting. Anne and I just met the other week at a coffee shop in our neighborhood. And it was so great to meet you, Anne. And I just wanted to invite you to share a little bit in response to the same question about your work at Adelphi Friends and how you have been called to take action on climate and the environment recently.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Yes, it was fun. It was very serendipitous meeting Olivia, and you were wearing a t-shirt or something that had FCNL. And so I'm co-clerk of Adelphi Friends Meetings Climate Action Work Group. And Adelphi is in Maryland, right outside of DC, and we're part of Baltimore Yearly Meeting. And a lot of what we're doing or thinking about resonates with the previous two speakers, with Patricia and Silky, in many different ways. It's really amazing. We're all on the same page. Our meetings efforts on climate, go way back. There have been people working on this for a long time. And in fact, in 2007, our meeting adopted a minute on sustainability. And I think we borrowed heavily from another Quaker meeting somewhere, I think in the Midwest. I'm forgetting exactly which meeting, but this sustainability minute, it's on our Adelphi's website, and it still really resonates with all of us. It's beautifully, beautifully written. But for several years, we didn't have a formal committee. So in August of 2022, our Peace and Social Concerns Committee felt the need for us to try to form another work group. So we got together. We're a small committee of about 7 people, And we're really driven by our love of the earth and our desire to take action. The fact that we're a climate action work group is very meaningful to us because we really want to act. At the same time, we knew we had to educate ourselves. So for the first year, we met twice a month, and one meeting was just educating ourselves, watching webinars together, reading books. And we also picked up the Quaker Earth Care Witness, I think that's a QEW curriculum for children. And some of us teach in the first day program. And oh, I forgot, I was going to say in the beginning, another member of our work group's on the call, Ruby Steigerwald. And so she actually was the first clerk of our group. And Ruby teaches in our first day program, and so do I. So we've tried to bring, ideas and about climate change into our teaching with the children. And so our major activities are a combination of I'd say I put them in three categories. First is truly about sustainability and good stewardship of the earth. So in that area, one thing we started is a repair cafe, which I told Olivia about, and I'm hoping that you can come, Olivia, with your things to be fixed. If you aren't aware, there's an international movement of repair cafes, and one of the members of our group had been doing this in his county, in Howard County, Maryland. And so he oriented us, and we started doing this, and it's very popular at our meeting. And we're having our 5th repair cafe on May 3rd, Saturday, May 3rd, from 10 to 2. And people can bring up to 3 items to be repaired. And we have fixers from our meeting that do this for free. And it's very popular. And, we try to do a little educating about climate change with books and resources, but it's mostly about, sustainability. And then we did a number of other small things, like we started a listserv in our community to share things, Adelphi Shares listserv. And we have a little basket in meeting called the Small Shares Basket. And then also around sustainability and care of the earth, this was an area of that Ruby feels particularly strong about, and that's in terms of our building and our meeting grounds. So we started planting native trees, and at our annual Strawberry Festival, we had a whole section of our plant sale devoted to native plants. And we are actively doing composting, and we would like to have a community garden. It's great to know that Patricia's meeting has one, because we really want to get there. The only thing, and it's a big only thing, is that finally, after more than 10 years of deliberation, we're renovating our meeting house. And so we've got to get that done. But our group is also looking into ways that we can maybe put some solar panels on the new roof and things like that. So the second area is policy action. So, because I feel very strongly about that, and so do other members of our committee. So we've had some guest speakers during second hours. We had someone, we're really lucky because we're in the DC area. So we had a woman who had worked on militarism and the environment. I'm blanking on her name, but she gave a wonderful second hour about on that topic. And we also had someone from the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, CCAN, which is a very active group in the DMV, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia area, that lobbies for on climate issues. And then towards that end, this year, some of us from our group wrote testimony for the Maryland State Legislature. You know, when things started looking really bad at the national level, we were, some of us are like, okay, well, let's see what we could, we're not abandoning the federal level, and we'll still participate with FCNL and all your great, actions. But at the same time, can we do things in Maryland? Because, and Maryland's been a leader on the climate, but and even though we have a great governor and, a Democratic assembly, there's still a danger of, backsliding. And for instance, this year, the General Assembly was taking up some legislation to build new gas plants because they were warning about, they were saying, well, our electricity demand's going up and the cost, and so we've got to build some new gas plants. And Chesapeake Climate Action Network said, no, this is not the way to go. And it actually will cost more money in the long run, and, not to mention the harm to the environment and to people. So, so members of our committee wrote testimony, and the bill was essentially changed, and we were effective, was the bottom line. And so we hope to do more of that. Our state legislative year is so short, though, that it's already over. It's only April 16th, and that's it for this year. But there's, a lot of stuff can happen, in the interim. And so we're going to keep connecting. And then the third area is connecting with other faith communities. And in our area, there's something called the Interfaith Partners of the Chesapeake, IPC. And some of our friends from our group participated in a Green Leaders training that they sponsored. And we as a community, Adelphi signed a pledge with the Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, and other monthly meetings in our area are also part of that, and as well as many other faith communities. And we'd like to reach out to them. But our committee is small, and I was glad to hear, Patricia's ideas about, involving more people. We find it's a little hard because there's so many other concerns, that are social justice concerns that are really pressing. And of course, as a monthly meeting in the DC area, we're greatly impacted by the, the dismantling of the federal government. So, people really care about the environment, and a lot of people individually are doing things in our meeting, but it's hard to go to another meeting when, so much is going on.
Thank you so much, Anne, for sharing those stories and for that kind of three-piece breakdown that was helpful about the sustainability and stewardship work, the policy and advocacy work, and then the interfaith work and that community building work. We have about 5 minutes, and I think time for at least one or two questions from any other participants. If you have a question for Anne or for Patricia or for Silka or for Darren and Anna, you can type those in the chat and we'll read them out.
And Ruby, if you wanted to say anything, feel free to chime in. No, okay.
No, I
Yeah,
think
we
you
can
covered it pretty well.
Yeah, and welcome all of our friends from all the meetings. I'm seeing the comment from Keith in the chat. about I'd be interested in describing a project in Kenya sponsored by Quaker Earth Care Witness. Yes, Keith, if you would like to share, and then Margaret, we can go to you after Keith. And we might have to allow you the microphone, Keith. Give us 1 second. And this is Keith Barton, seeing that we have 2 Keiths on the call.
Is it ready?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes, I'm Keith Barton. I live in Berkeley, California, member of Berkeley Friends Church, affiliated with Friends United Meeting. For the last year and a half, I've been doing the coordinating from this side of the ocean for a project in Eastern Kenya, which is being performed by a Quaker pastor who trained at Friends Theological College. He has a tree planting program to reforest or increase the number of trees in this region of Eastern Kenya, which was devastated by droughts for 2 years. We've had a matching grant from Quaker Earth Care Witness to support the program. The budget is really quite modest, and that's because US dollars go a very long way in Kenya. So his operating budget is in the vicinity of $1,000 a year, although he is expanding from 1 tree nursery to 3 in the course of this year, based on local enthusiasm for it. And it's I can certainly share more information, and I'll put my email in the chat if people want more information about it. But it's very meaningful to the people there. They are struggling with climate change, and they were really devastated for 2 years, and parts of Kenya are still devastated by drought. So it's a hands-on, practical thing that friends should at least learn about. And sending $20 is a significant amount of money there. It will buy a tool or something that they really need. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Keith. And yes, please feel free to share any links in the chat that you'd like people to visit. And Margaret, I saw you had your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Okay. Margaret Lechner, Clear Creek Meeting in Richmond, and we have a green team that does a combination of going for walks in the beautiful spring wildflowers this past weekend, lobbying state and FCNL. So we do a combination of things. One thing that I personally have been doing a bit of, and perhaps we can think of this in the letter writing, is writing individual or small group emails to friends saying, look, you get a gazillion group things. I am asking you, we're in Indiana, Todd Young is so important to write about. So I will send a batch of perhaps 5 emails. And what's wonderful is people start replying all. I did it. I sent my letter to Todd Young. Oh, I did too. I did too. So it was the effectiveness of a message targeted to this set of friends and that set of friends and that set of friends, giving them a model and all the contact information. One question I have for you folks is, obviously in person is best. What is relative effectiveness of phone call, email, handwritten letter, blah, 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 so I can advise them? Partly I say, don't let the perfect get in the way of a good enough right now. But it also would be helpful to have some advice on, if you're not going to do in person, which we're doing too, what are the relative effectiveness of other means of communication?
Thank you for that question. I wonder, Darren, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah, I can jump on that. Well, first of all, thank you, Margaret, for all the work that you're doing. Super appreciate it. And you're right, Todd Young is going to be critical in both this issue and so many others as well. So in general, from my experience working for Senator McCaskill in Missouri, the most effective advocacy tools are those that are the most personalized. So handwritten letters are incredibly powerful in lieu of in-person meetings in the offices. By the way, visits in person to the office either in the district where you all live in the state or here in DC. Both of those are incredibly important. But I would say out of the options that you just gave between phone calls, emails, and handwritten letters are incredibly influential. When I was in Senator McCaskill's office, we had to manually enter those. It wasn't something that just automatically went into our system. And I was there at a time when we still had a fax machine, so we would have to scan them all in and send over a select batch of them every week for our briefing meeting with the senator, so that she could actually read, a printout of some of those specific handwritten letters. So from my experience in that office, I would say that is a great way to really break through with your elected officials. So highly encourage, if you can do that, if you have the ability to write those handwritten letters and send them in or go in person and drop them off, that's an incredibly powerful way to connect with your members and build that relationship.
And can you take me down the list? If someone I'm working to get them to get their voice in, they're not going to be in person, they're not going to handwritten. Can you just prioritize others?
Yeah, out of those other two, I would say that probably phone calls are the next best option, because hearing your voice and being able to actually physically speak to someone in the office, you can start to build that connection with the other person on the line. And especially if you're consistently calling in, over time, they're going to start to recognize your number, and you can start to build that relationship up into a more, into potentially doing more actions or connections with them later on. And then I would say at the bottom is emails. But that's not to say that emails are not incredibly important, like what we're about to do today. It's an important way to get that relationship started from the ground up, so that you can move on to doing phone calls, and then eventually letters, and then eventually, hopefully, those in-person meetings. So I hope that's helpful, Margaret. Yeah.
Thank you, Darren. And yeah, having that inside perspective from your time as a staffer is really helpful. I know we have other questions in the chat. I'll invite our guests. So Patricia and I know Silke had to leave, but if you want to share your email addresses for folks to get in touch with you, we invite you to. No pressure. We also invite folks to email us if you have further questions. Jackson, you can maybe share Darren and Anna's emails in the chat as well. Ruby, to your question about our DC friends, there are lots of actions happening every day at the Capitol, at other sites, and we'll be getting some friends in DC together actually next month for some meetings. So we would love to work with you, Ruby, to make our voices heard for those of us in DC as well. But as Darren mentioned, we want to actually put some of this great energy, some of these stories into action in the form of sending these very personalized messages to our members of Congress. And so our plan is to engage our representatives by sharing our personalized stories, but using a template that we're going to share with you all. So for the final 30 minutes of this call, I'll pass it back to Darren and Anna to share tips for how we can share those stories and write those persuasive, memorable messages, whether it's on a handwritten postcard, a handwritten letter, or in an email. We'll spend some time in breakout groups actually writing and drafting those stories and those messages together. And then we'll, at 7:50, bring everybody back and have a couple of folks share out what they wrote. And Margaret, I appreciate that you asked, what are the things that people can do if an in-person meeting isn't feasible for me and my group? because we recognize that, you know, every group of people is going to have a different level of action that is accessible and convenient and easy to schedule and coordinate for them. But if you can schedule and coordinate an in-person meeting this week and next week, members of Congress are going to be back home in their districts. And so now is a great time to reach out, to call them, to try to schedule a meeting, or just to drop by. And, you know, share your personal stories, and we'll share some resources in the chat for how you can schedule those meetings, for how you can have those drop by visits. But for right now, something we can do in these 30 minutes is work on these personalized written messages. So I'll pass it back to Darren and Anna to take us through that.
Great, yeah. So we don't have a ton to add here before we go to breakouts. But just to say, you know, to say again why writing letters, why meeting with your members right now matters, and why it still matters, even with all the chaos and the craziness going on. So one, to reiterate, congressional offices track very closely this constituent input. I know it sometimes feels like they don't, but I can promise you, as somebody from the other side, especially when we're coming up to incredibly controversial votes, incredibly votes that are going to really come down to the wire, members pay very close attention to what their constituents are saying. And especially if they're in a marginal seat, so a seat that, you know, is pretty close in every election, they are paying very close attention to exactly what the majority of the calls that they're getting from their constituents are on any piece of legislation. So, you know, again, with my background, I was with Senator McCaskill during the repeal of the or the attempted repeal of the Affordable Care Act back in well, I guess that was 2017. And it was, you know, our entire days were literally with sticky notes, tallying up where people were calling in either in support or opposition to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. So again, just I can say this is incredibly, incredibly important work at this particular stage in this piece of legislation. Second, it personalizes the policy. It can be pretty abstract to talk about climate change and talk about environmental degradation, but when each of you comes in with your own personal story about why this is important to you, why you care about this, and why they should care about this as well, you help put a human face to these incredibly important issues. And then third, as we were saying earlier, this is all part of a larger campaign to build pressure and build momentum to defend these incredibly important investments. We're not doing this alone. No individual one of us is doing this alone. There are so many other groups that are taking actions, that are making calls, that are, you know, protesting and doing actions, that are calling their members in support of these investments, and you all get to be a part of that, which is super exciting and super awesome. So again, thank you all for being here. And then I guess maybe the last one is maybe a little cheesy, but still important. It strengthens our democracy. This is, you know, why we're all here. This is part of living in a democracy and being proud to live in that democracy, to be able to use our voices to really make big, impactful change. So that's why this is important. Again, super excited for you all to be here. And hopefully this is just the start of this work, or just another part of this work for you all. And we can continue to work together going forward, even after this call, to continue to work on these incredibly important issues. So maybe actually one last thing before we go into breakout rooms. I think another thing many of us kind of get wrapped up in is, you know, concerns about, you know, if you don't know all the stats, or if you don't know, you know, all the ins and outs of this legislation. I just want to affirm that the template that we're going to work on today is going to include many of those stats. You don't need to have any of those sort of specifics on the economic impacts memorized to do this activity. Really, the part of this activity that we're going to work on together is going through and brainstorming your particular stories. So we've got that, you know, sort of the more statistics, the more sort of factoid part of these letters already drafted. The only part that you all have to focus on is how you want to tell your stories and why this is important to you. So maybe with that, Olivia, maybe we are good to go out into a couple breakout rooms to have these conversations together.
Wonderful. So Jackson just sent the link to our action alert template in the chat. Folks can click on that link and we'll spend, let's say, until 7:50 with 4 or 5 other friends brainstorming together about what we can share about why this legislation is important to us. And we have some questions on that template there to get you started. And we'll be here in the main room if anyone has specific questions they want to ask us, but we encourage you all to lean on each other and ask questions of each other. So yes, Jackson just shared the link on the chat. Please click on it. It'll take you to our action alert template. And then we will send you all into breakout rooms and come back at 7:50. And thank you to all our friends who are still here in the main room with us. Happy to answer any questions if you all have them. But thanks for being with us tonight. I think Darren and Anna and Jackson, we have the ability to join any of the rooms, so feel free to hop in and hop out if you would like, but no pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe I will bounce around to some of the rooms if that's okay, Olivia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
also think I was just about to respond to some questions in the chat, but then I will also bounce around.
Wonderful. Thanks for being with us, Dee. It's good to see you. And thanks to all, Lauren, Doris, our friend Rural.
I am here while on a run.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for being with us. Be safe.
Going to a different room.
Hey, Jackson, I know that this is not your expertise, but maybe you can find out from Darren or others. Does the current resolutions passed by House and Senate, does it include the tax credit? Does it not include the tax credit? Or is it silent on that? That would be very helpful information to get. I was in room 4. I'm willing to go back with them, but I said I would get that information and bring it to them because that will help how we frame our letters.
Yeah, I think Anna has provided something of a response in the chat.
Okay. Let me
I
go
think
find it.
I think currently there has not been specific detail about the credits proposed, but it's going to be discussed as an option to cut while committees try and implement the blueprint, the general blueprint for the budget resolution. So the specifics have not been put in there, but it's being discussed right now as an optional cut as they try to ultimately pass that budget resolution.
Okay, so it's sort of silent on that issue.
I
And
think
if you
that's right.
if you can find, I don't know if you can reach Dean and Ann or whatever, it just get that put in a crawl line in the chat in the rooms or something.
Sure. Let me
Okay, and
try.
I think I'm gonna go back to my room. If you,
Okay.
I don't know if do you have to send me? I would think I was in room 4.
I think you can select to join. Are you seeing an option to do that?
Somewhere it probably exists. Join breakout room. Yep, there it is.
Perfect.
Welcome back, friends. Thanks to everyone for taking that time to brainstorm what your story is. We have time for, I think, 2 friends to share what they came up with. And please feel free to either raise your hand and we'll call on you, your Zoom hand or your physical hand, or to type what you came up with in the chat. I see Jane from North Carolina. Please go ahead, Jane. Jane, oh, I might need you to unmute yourself. There we
Okay,
go.
there. Yes. We had people in our group who had people who legislators who would understand everything that we're saying, and we had legislators, people who had legislators that nobody would understand what we're saying and why we would say that. So and basically we decided we would contact them no matter which way our legislators are.
And I bet you were not alone in having that experience in your group. And yes, please do contact them no matter what they've said before, what party they're a part of. They need to hear from us. And they need to hear how we're all being impacted. So thank you, Jane, for sharing. Pat, would you like to share?
Yes, we had several reasons of why we would contact and what stories we would tell, but the thing that got to me was that grandchildren are a huge motivator, but the other side of it is my children don't want to have children because of what they will face in the future.
Thank you for sharing. And yeah, that connection, the generational impact and the impact on our families, our children, our grandchildren. Thank you, Pat. And all right, Denny, we'll give you the last word from West Virginia. Please go ahead.
I also, I want to say that yesterday I talked with House Representative Congresswoman Capito's office about solar panels, and I connected with Solar United Neighborhood to speak with them. And my point that I made during that conversation was, I'm on a fixed income. West Virginia retired teachers don't get cost of living increases. What you get is what you get for the rest of your life. With that kind of economic barrier over me, I wanted to be sure that I would have enough money to last me. So solar panels gave me that. I know that my electricity is now covered and taken care of. So I don't have to worry about that increasing or decreasing. I also bought an electric vehicle, so I don't have to worry about gas prices either. And this was a way to keep my fixed income within a decent budget that I could, guarantee. So it's a little bit freaky sometimes for the older people in this rocky, economic conditions that we have now. And this was some way of gaining some stability.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Denny. And yeah, that powerful personal story about how these programs are impacting you and what threats the cuts might pose. And thank you for doing that work of sharing those stories with your congresspeople. And thank you to everyone who shared either in your small group, in the chat with each other, who wrote some ideas down. I'm going to ask our friend Jackson to share our email action alert link one more time. If you do anything in these next 3 minutes, it's to please type out your story and hit send on that email to make sure your member of Congress receives it. And I saw our friend Tay shared in the chat a link to get postcards that you can write on. Feel free to write your story out by hand and send it in the mail as well. As we heard from Darren, those handwritten personalized notes can be really memorable and really effective. So to close us out this evening, we're nearing the end of our time. I just wanted to thank everybody again for joining this Quaker Changemaker Earth Month call to action. And a special thank you to our amazing panelists, Darren and Anna, Silka, Pat, and Anne, and to everyone who shared. I really loved, I think the quote that's sticking with me right now is that our work is a mosaic. All of the things we do, from planting native plant community gardens and trees, to seeing what upgrades we can make in our meeting houses or in our own houses, and how we might be able to get clean energy tax credits to offset the cost of them, to this lobbying work and storytelling work and communications work. That other quote I think is sticking with me is that so much of climate work is communications work and storytelling work. So I'm taking those pieces of wisdom and inspiration with me tonight. I hope you all can take some pieces of wisdom and inspiration with you as well. We have a few reminders and resources that we just shared in the chat about ways that you can get involved. You can reach out to your members of Congress while they're in district using our April Recess Toolkit. You can use our guide for scheduling a meeting with Congress. You can read Anna's amazing latest blog post about how different meetings have benefited from these clean energy tax credits. And then finally, the link to what we're asking Congress to do right now, which is protecting these clean energy jobs and investments in the budget process. If anyone else wants to share any links as we go, please feel free. Please look for a follow-up email from us as well with all of these links compiled. And thank you again, everyone. We hope you have a great rest of your evening, and we hope to see you for our next Quaker Changemaker event in June. But until then, see you later.